We are all born with a brain that has 86 billion neurons, and through our lifetime, we make relatively few neurons. In fact, we lose about 2 billion neurons throughout the course of our lifetime. If we're losing billions of neurons and we're not making a lot of new neurons, what's changing in the brain to support all those mental habits and behavior that make our self-identity? The answer is activity-dependent plasticity. This is the function by which the brain is continually modified through the 150 trillion cell-to-cell synaptic connections that there are made in response to your everyday experiences. They are continually changing your brain and they are strongly influencing your health and longevity. That a synaptic form of mental training involving meditations can potentially transform yourself and your mental habits in a positive way. Neuroplasticity is the brain's ability to reorganize its shapes due to the new interconnections in nerve. Plasticity is the brain's ability to adapt or change after a new influence or stimulations. When the brain is stimulated, neurons or nerve cells and it will be connected to each other. With neuroplasticity, brain nerves can also work together to take over the damaged role. To reshape there needs to be stimulations of the nerves of the brain. These stimulations can be done with various activities. Plasticity is a trait that indicates the capacity of the brain to change and adapt the functional requirements. The brain's capabilities to adapt to active functions allow humans to specialize in a specific process based on relative use and activities. Activity-dependent plasticity plays a crucial role in learning and the ability to understand new things. It is responsible for helping to adjust one brain according to the relative amount of use and function. From this material, we can connect with other sciences so as to make us discover a new knowledge and learn other topics that are related to this material. This discussion is also related to daily activities, which is make us easy for us to relate. The plasticity that depends on our activities turns out to be as good as depends our activities that we do. Therefore, we must take care of ourselves so that all the things in us was maintained and in good conditions. Especially now that we know about plasticity, which depends on the activities that we do.
Mindful awareness through meditation. How activity-dependent plasticity concept could be applied towards our neuroscientific understanding of the self through the lens of meditation and mindful awareness. Mindful awareness can be simply thought of as a way of paying attention in a way that is continually watchful and discerning for what is arising and passing in the mind and the external world. With mindfulness, we learn to recognize and acknowledge what's going on in the mind, moment by moment, without judgment, and with benevolence, and let it go. With awareness, we use mainstream as the actual focal point of the meditation. Spiritual serenity can help us to be healthy both mentally and physically. It can help us to understand more deeply ourselves and also establish good relationships with others. Someone who has spiritual serenity has a more peaceful life without harboring negative feelings. On the contrary, they have friendly feelings with everyone. Through our meditation, through our mindfulness practice, we have developed awareness so that emotions become more stable and easy to control, especially if practiced frequently. And this awareness depends on being to recognize and embrace any and all sensation in the body, including the sensation of breath. Awareness can include knowledge of the mind. Through the sense, including the mind, we can know anything. And we naturally allow the plane of consciousness to include, of course, not just the sensations associated with breathing or the touch of air on the skin, but every sensation and all sensation in our bodies.
Now, this part of our mental experience is all happening without conscious awareness. In the second half of each moment, our primary sensory cortex, located throughout the outer surface of our brain, is integrating information coming from perception, awareness, and preparing inference and predictions to inform our behavior. And only by the end of each moment, around 300 to 500 milliseconds, does awareness arise, and then we begin to evaluate what it were experiencing. And that evaluation takes place in our aspects of our prefrontal cortex. So, this string of moments is sustaining our mental habits and disposition that are self-conditioning and self-perpetuating through repetition. Is continually informing our present state of awareness and coloring our memories for the past and making predictions for the future. And this basic idea here really supports the idea that he has had about 3 billion moments in 42 years, and somewhere along this string of moments, he developed a bad habit. Maybe you can relate. A little over a decade later, when he was 20 years old, his sophomore year of college, he had the opportunity to go on a meditation retreat, a 10-day silent meditation retreat. Systematic mental training through meditation and mindfulness has the potential to positively change ourselves and our mental habits. Later, in each moment, the primary sensory cortex, located on the outer surface of the brain, integrates information from perception and consciousness, preparing inference and predictions to inform action. Consciousness only occurs at the end of each moment, and the evaluation is done later in the prefrontal cortex. We also learn that each moment is an opportunity to change our brain and have a profound impact on our health and longevity on both a conscious and subconscious level.
Talking about meta awareness, it refers to an awareness of where our attention is and where it's going at any moment. Meta awareness is likely unique. It represents the ability to step outside one's own thoughts and reflect upon them, and it appears to be essential to nearly all forms of mindfulness practice. Meta awareness plays a key role in processes that are central to therapeutic effects of mindfulness training, including the centering, which shifts one experiential perspective onto experience itself, and deification of metacognitive insight. Experiencing thoughts as mental events and not as the things that they seem to represent. When we practice using a mindfulness based approach, it acts as a wedge to open up our minds and provides insight into the mental habits that are arising. The state of mindfulness is often described as the wedge of meta awareness. If it's inserted deeply enough into our minds, it will open up our minds to wisdom. So, the idea here is that when we practice mindfulness, the awareness and the wisdom work together, helping to reduce the time spent in judgment and evaluation, so it can be situated in the present moment with our sensory awareness, and allow the emotions to arise and pass without the impulse to act. We can look from negative emotions that we have, like anger, anxiety, fear, worry, and sadness. They all have the tendency to be destructive mental habits and dispositions, especially when happening in great frequency. So it becomes this really bad cycle, because if you don't have the ability to regulate the emotions, well, it's going to be much harder to regulate them in the future.
Okay, so based on a string of moments, anger could affect the short-term memory. But other than that, there's a link between angers into a human's health too. Hill et al. At 2006 has warned of an act of negative emotion and has a proof to establishes a positive correlation between it with a negative condition such as coronary heart disease or CHD. And anger also have a direct impact upon a cardiovascular disease through the HPA axis and the sympathetic nervous system. Their activation leading into an excessive liberation of corticosteroid and catecholamines. The liberation of such stress hormones can produce an avalanche events, including the hemodynamic and metabolic modification, vascular problems, and also a disorder of the cardiac rhythm. And anger can also contribute to an adoption of an unhealthy lifestyle, such as smoking, alcohol and caffeine consumption, and also consumption of high-calorie aliments. And there's also one study from the Center for the Disease Control stated that angry disposition or anger could increase its chances of risks of dying prematurely from the heart attack. And there's still many more of a bad effect of angry disposition to human health, which are diabetes, driving anger, bulimic behavior, and also adolescence. But other than the angry disposition, there's also another disposition that linked to human health too. And those dispositions are anxiety, fear, sadness, and also worry. Those dispositions have the tendency to be a destructive mental habits, but only when they're happening with a great frequency. And it contains the risks of injury and also interference socially. Those dispositions also have the most extensive scientific data to support their role as the risk factor for the onset of the clinical levels of depression, anxiety disorder, cardiovascular disease, and also cellular aging. And whole number of studies show that this disposition and the associated of a chronic stress can have a negative effect on your immune system functioning, on the sensitization of pain pathways, and atrophy shrinking of the brain region responsible for the regulating this negative emotion. And it will become a bad cycle if people don't have the ability to regulate or control their emotion. And this material presented has been proven by many researchers whose evidence can be seen from the many research journals on the internet.
The last segment is about the mechanism of mindfulness. One study by David Feiko introduced mindfulness training to a group of women diagnosed with fibromyalgia, which is a chronic pain disorder associated with widespread muscular tenderness and chronic fatigue. Together with his team, David Feiko found that those fibromyalgia patients had a high level of anxiety and fear associated with their pain. So it is linear with the previous segment about how dispositions and emotions can affect our health. Feiko did that research to look for explanations about how mindfulness works in order to improve our health physically and mentally. Through the research that has been done by giving those patients some pain-related words for 100 until 500 milliseconds, David found that the groups who got exposed to mindfulness training had less fear and avoidance more than those who didn't. Then, what is the mechanism behind that results? Talking about the mechanism of mindfulness, there are 3 axioms that can help us deduce how might mindfulness work. We will discuss it together. The first point is intention. When mindfulness is practiced, an individual's intentions change from regulating themselves to exploring themselves, and then finally to seeking liberation. Why someone wants to practice mindfulness is a key part of what they will achieve from doing so. The second is attention. In the context of mindfulness practice, paying attention involves observing the operations of one's moment to moment, internal and external experiences. Someone will be suspending all the ways of interpreting experience and attending to experience itself as it presents itself in the here and now. In this way, one learns to attend to the contents of consciousness moment by moment. By the practice of paying attention, someone is in his healing process. The last point is attitude. When doing the mindfulness practice, someone has to approach it with a positive attitude full of curiosity, openness, and patience to allow for non-judgmental growth and awareness. That's all from our group. Thank you for your attention.